So, a warm welcome to all our members for the Farmer Network Members Hour. We started this about three months ago, and we see it as an open, inclusive chance for our members to listen to our invited guests, and sometimes we do our own team industry updates as well. Our guest speaker today is Jemma Holden, who is Technical Manager for Red Tractor Assurance, Dairy, Beef and Lamb sector. I know Gemma's been in this role for 5 years, and our paths in the Farmer Network have crossed many, many times. I know Jemma of old, and she's worked among livestock most of her life. She actually has, sorry to embarrass you, Jemma, a master's degree in applied poultry science and an honours degree in animal behaviour and welfare. But she is farmer through and through, I know that. So I've bigged you up there, Jemma. I'm guessing the last 5 years of your career might have been a little bit challenging at times, but we're all looking forward to hearing what you've got to say and giving us an update on Red Tractor. So I'm going to hand over to you. If anybody's got any questions, we'll leave those till the end, but do put them in the chat if you're happy to type them in the chat, and then we can have a chat after that. So, Jemma, I'm going on mute, and it's over to you.
Hopefully you can see my screen. That's a good start. Thank you very much for that, Adam. So I will also just do a little quick introduction as well. So I am the Dairy, Beef and Lamb Technical Manager here at Red Tractor. So my responsibilities are managing the standards, engaging with stakeholders across the supply chain, and then dealing with some of the other bits that happen within Red Tractor. So I still do live on a sheep farm here in Lancashire. My annual leave is lambing at home and attempting to not get sacked, which for the last 2 years has been successful. So just going to give you a quick background on Red Tractor, and then I will go on to some of the most common non-conformances, how you can avoid them, and then some of the current bits that I'm working on, which was agreed at the board in June. So Red Tractor is the largest and most comprehensive food assurance scheme in the UK. So the core mission is to reassure the public that food bearing its logo is safe and responsibly produced. So it was founded over 2 decades ago, so we're in our 25th year this year, and that campaign kicks off towards the end of the year, celebrating 25 years. So as over 25 years, consumer demand shift, and we have tried to keep pace with those demands. But ultimately, our core mission is still to reassure the public that food is responsibly produced. So we are owned by the farming unions, AHDB, Dairy UK, and the British Retail Consortium. So every retailer and caterer and many other leading UK brands insist on Red Tractor for their buying specification. So while some supermarkets may not use the logo, they make a claim that the products, that the meat that they buy or vegetables that they buy have to be Red Tractor assured. So we'll go into a little bit more detail about logo use and claim use afterwards. So we have approximately 46,000 Red Tractor certified memberships, and we cover approximately 82% of finished beef, 55% of finished lamb, 95% of pork, same of chicken, 8% of turkey, 70% of duck, and we're up to 98% in the dairy sector. So the Red Tractor logo appears on approximately £17 billion worth of food and drink, and it is the most trusted food mark in the UK. So consumer trust is currently at 71%. So that was done, I think, in May earlier this year. So we are trusted, 72%, there you go, trusted by consumers. We are required by supermarkets, and we are valued by government. So there is some earned recognition across the sectors. So there's earned recognition with the FSA for the food and feed hygiene assessments. So if you're a Red Tractor member, you should have less assessments from trading standards on food and hygiene. And then if you're a dairy member, you would only be inspected by the dairy hygiene inspector every 10 years, as opposed to every 2 years if you are non-assured. So we are a non-for-profit private company, and our income is from 3 principal sources. So one is the license fee. So that's the annual fee to cover the use of the logo or any Red Tractor claim, farmer royalty, and then the certification body royalty. So that's an annual fee charged to certification bodies to carry out our assessments. So we are a whole supply chain assurance scheme. So every link of the supply chain is assured from farm, transport, markets, collection centres, abattoir, cutting plants and further processors. And for the eligibility criteria on the licensing side, you must have a license at each step of them in that chain. So we cover dairy, goats, chicken, ducks, turkeys, fresh produce, combinable crops, beef and lamb. So we cover a huge amount of sectors, so 6 in total. I look after 74% of the Red Tractor membership. So I do dairy, beef, lamb, dairy, goats, markets, collection centres and transport as well. So just going to go into a little bit more detail about the licensing overview and the claim definition, because it is something that we don't really shout about enough, but it's quite an integral part of what we do here at Red Tractor. So our licensees, they are from the smallest entrepreneurial food producers to the largest processors and packers to the most iconic British household brands and global food service providers. So on the right-hand side of the slide there, you will see all the people that A, use the logo, or B, make a claim on the products that they are buying. So to make a claim, the food business operator must be licensed, and they renew that application every year, starting on the 1st of April. So that's dealt with by different people within the company, but they there's a technical approval, signing of the license, declaration of what products are Red Tractor, and then a certificate is issued. So it's the Red Tractor claim. It's not just about the logo use. It's also about any terminology that's used on invoices or within buy-in specifications as well, or even claims made on some menus that are out there. Anything where the logo or a claim is made, a license fee must be paid. So we have, for the 2024-2025 year, there's about 900 licensed sites, so 621 businesses, and that's how we calculate the sales value by the applications that are made each year. So a little bit more about my role and standard setting. So we have to balance 4 key stakeholders, so farmers all the way through to retailers and everybody in between. So shoppers want food that's been produced safely and responsibly, and farmers want manageable standards that gives them greater market access. And then there is a positive impact on their returns, which is a little bit challenging perhaps now than it was 25 years ago. Now, if we get it wrong, there is a chance that government may increase their inspections on farms. Farmers may lose market access. Consumers may step away from Red Tractor and buy on price. Now, we know to an extent that already happens in the market because ultimately price is king. But Red Tractor does have that trust. So we know that some people do buy on British and Red Tractor. And then retailers, if we fail to meet some of their requirements, they may also put their own schemes in place. And we do see a little bit of this, particularly in the dairy sector. And that is, I think, because there are USPs there that are claims at point of sale. So Red Tractor would be the foundation, and the first purchaser has built their standards on top of that. So how standards are set, this is a quite lengthy process. So our scope remains the same: food safety, animal welfare, traceability and environment. Standards change. We tend to do a big standards change every 4 to 5 years with some interim changes in between, but that may extend longer or it may be shorter if there's been legislative changes, customer or consumer expectations changed, and there's reputational risks or anything to do with Red Tractor integrity. So interim changes happen. So the last the last full review of all the standards was October 2021, just after I started at Red Tractor. And we, within the beef and lamb scheme, have had 2 interim changes. One where we streamlined some of the standards, and then the last one was in February this year, where we removed some standards and we recognised pathway as part of that process. So we have a technical advisory committee. They look at the detail of the standards. So that's, again, on that technical advisor committee is a whole host of people from the farming all the way up to the retailer sector, including vets. And they pick away at the detail, and then the board agree them standards, and then we go out to consultation. And during that time, we have a lot of stakeholder engagement from the whole spectrum of the farming industry. Any queries or questions or changes go back down to the TAC to be discussed and then go back up for the board for final approval. So standards are based on science and evidence, legislation, best practice, consumer demand, to ensure that all the 4 pillars of Red Tractor are covered. All our standards are assessed independently. So they're assessed by certification bodies who are accredited to ISO 17065. And that's so we're not marking our own homework, basically, in theory. So running on to some compliance data. So I've just done this morning. So Q2 for 2025, so April to June this year, we did 3,242 assessments in beef and lamb. The average non-conformance was 1.5 at each assessment, and there was 48% assessments with no non-conformances. However, somebody did get 29 non-conformances on their assessment during that period, which is a little disappointing. So again, you can see over the last 4 quarters how the average non-conformance has reduced, and we typically see this when new standards get introduced. We see a peak in the number of non-conformances, and then once the standards have been embedded, that average number per assessment comes down, and this just trends that way. So we had more people having a non-conformances in 2021, and the average over the last 4 years is 35% with no non-conformances. So the top non-conformances, we don't like to call them top 10, we like to call them top most common non-conformances. And unfortunately, this does fit into the rhetoric of there's a lot of paperwork within Red Tractor. I'm not expecting you to know all the standard codes at the bottom, that's my job. But the top 9 of these is paperwork. So AH1 and AH1.1, they both relate to the health plan or the health and performance review not being signed annually. Or AH2 is records. Again, those records weren't completed for the last 12 months. So the only one there that isn't paperwork is HF1, and that relates to the structure of the housing. So there may be some tin turned up, gates in disrepair where animals could injure themselves. So when we implemented version 5, we changed the layout of the standards so that there were standards and then audit points. So the rationale behind adding audit points was that we would assess a consistency. Everyone knew what they were assessing. In fact, it was transparent what was being assessed, and then it allows Red Tractor to get more granular detail about what was actually wrong with a non-conformance. So in this case, this is about health plans. Again, don't expect to know the numbers. So the health plan, you've got to have a health plan in place that's implemented. 46% of any non-conformances raised is related to the plan isn't signed by the vet annually. So what normally happens is people run to the vet the day before their assessment, and the vet's busy, and then that's not been signed within the last 12 months. So we really advise everybody to get that health plan signed every year, because in theory, farming is an annual cycle, so it helps with your records as well. In terms of medicine records, it's in the top 10. We go above legislation for the animal medicine record. So there's 2 elements that are above legislation. And the reason why, so 69% of any non-conformance is related to medicine records is because there is a detail missing, not because there is no medicine records available. And typically it's either reason for treatment, name of person administrating the medicine, or every now and then it's batch numbers that just haven't been crossed over from the purchase records. So again, it's all about making sure all them elements are completed and making sure you reference the standards to make sure your medicine book does include all that information, or your farm software. So we do have regular meeting with farm software groups about standards to make sure they align, but sometimes little bits get missed off. And then slurry storage, this is probably a big one across the industry. This is something that isn't just a red tractor problem. This is a whole industry problem. So the most common non-conformance is that there is no slurry storage calculation. So if you don't have enough slurry storage, so 26% of all non-conformances raised, members don't have enough slurry storage. We are not asking you to go and build a new store because that's not within our gift. So what we are asking for is a plan. So if you don't have enough slurry storage, how are you going to manage the excess? So have you got any additional capacity anywhere? Can you take it to a neighbour who's got more than enough? Can you reduce cow numbers? Is there a slurry separator you can use, redirect rainwater, etc.? So we have a template available if anybody wants it, where you can work through how you can possibly reduce the amount of slurry you've got on farm. So as I mentioned before, some of the interim changes that happened earlier this year, we recognise the standards relating to the DEFRA pathway, because we appreciate we're both looking at the same outcome for the health and performance review and the health and performance records. There's a new section on urea because the government wanted to ban the use of urea, but they asked Red Tractor, the industry asked Red Tractor to put a standard in so we could make sure it was used at the right time. We updated the medicine section because there has been a change in legislation. And then we removed 2 standards because they were poorly worded, were duplicated and didn't really apply to the beef and dairy sectors. So the future of assurance, what we're looking at right now. So the board meeting in June 25, I have just finished writing the sector strategy for beef and lamb, and I'm on the process with finishing the dairy one. So there's a clear message coming out of the strategies and the boards, and that is about rebuilding farmer trust. We are completely aware that the whole greener farm commitment debacle, we lost a lot of farmer trust, and that's our core principle at the minute, is to rebuild that. And that is by reviewing our standards. So the reviewing of our standards will start at the end of September. And we want to make sure that they are practical, robust, and fit for the future, and also reflect what actually happens in current practice. So there may be some trade-offs between outdated legislation and current practice. And we want to make sure we are developing the right standards, not just adding more. So we don't want a constant ratcheting of standards. There may be some standards that we think actually can be removed because we know there's already a good level of compliance with them, or in fact, they're not necessary for them to be assessed at farm. So all the standards, part of the process that is going to happen in September and beyond, is to justify why every standard is in place. So there's a clear rationale for each standard and a clear justification. So we can look back in the future and say, actually, that's why that put in there and this is the reason for. So it's absolutely justified, and there's agreement across the supply chain why that standard exists. And then again, the origin must be openly shared with all stakeholders. So at present, 73% of the beef and lamb standards are reflective of legislation, and anything that's on top of that is either slight changes that we've added to enhance the Red Tractor standards, or it could be best practice that we've added into the standards. So we want to go all the way back through our standards, make sure there's clear justification for them, make sure we know why they're there, assess whether the wording is correct, or actually do we want the outcome but the input needs to change. So that is the next step in the Red Tractor standards. And that is me. So has anybody got any questions?
I'll just bring you back onto my main screen. There we go. Okay, well, thanks, Jemma, for giving us that update. And it's literally hot off the press, isn't it? If this has just been in the board meeting in June and you're writing the policies. So has anybody got any comments, questions, statements? We've got Jemma for about another half an hour, so this is your chance. Please fire away. I'll take us.
Yeah, guess what, Adam? It's Rambo Estates here.
I did see you unmask yourself, Stephen. So yeah, how are
I'm
things
trying
over
to.
there in
Oh,
Middlesbrough?
not bad. We're good. But when it's dried up a bit after having a good drop of rain, we needed it badly.
Uh,
But anyway, I mean, no, and that's what, of course, Gemma has to try and fit in. No two farms are the same, and no two farmers are the same.
Yep.
I have a lot of common sense, but very little in the way of brain power. I'm sort of on the, as Karen found out from a delivery man the other day, I'm there, and Adam might have a view on this, but it's neither there, here or there to me. I'm nearly off the spectrum, she said. The wife agrees to that, but that's neither here or there. Basically, and you've highlighted that in your non-compliance, the majority of your non-compliance is down to paperwork. And that is by far the farmer's biggest issue because we are practical people. We're not knowledgeable people. We use our hands.
Yeah.
Practical skills, not the brain skills. So my last visit was actually, she was a very good lass, but in a way she was nearly too slack on the job because you are trying to now be a bit more farmer friendly, I think, a bit like the RPA, which, funny enough, the Farmers Network have had a thing on. So rather than an inspection, you should actually call it a visit. Because in a way, it's got to be, in a way, in my opinion, two ways. In other words, if I haven't got something right, which is often the case in paperwork, and I get stressed out with paperwork, it's just, oh. And I think a lot of practical farmers will have that issue. So in a way, if it is a non-compliance issue, if that inspector, whatever you might call it, but it should be really a visit. I think it's a bit more softly. In other words, you're trying to work with us and vice versa. We haven't got anything completely right. In previous inspections I've had, one's been very hard twice. The last one was very good, as in the stress levels for me.
Yeah.
And then the previous to that, the other fellow was particularly good as well because he said, look, you haven't done this, Stephen, but this is how you do it. And then it sort of gets the ball rolling in a way. So in a way, it's a non-compliant issue, but in a way, it can be rectified because you yourselves have got the knowledge on the from the paperwork perspective how to do it.
Yeah.
It's my first comment, generally speaking. The second comment, normally all of us, being in a farming background, when we go and visit a farmer, something, you can see by walking through the gate what you're going to come across. You could go to some farms where it looks like a bomb's hit it. And those farmers actually probably are under both mental and financial pressure.
Yeah.
So you've got to, in a way, if you get too hard, and I think the RPA are realizing this as well, if you get too hard, it can have untold damage. And by saying, look, we're here to work together, that sort of eases it a bit more. But when I say when you go through a farm gate and you actually see that it looks like a bomb's hit it, that actually 75% of your assessment should be on what the actual farm looks like together with the livestock on it. Are the livestock healthy and happy? And is the farm sort of safe for both man and beast, so to speak? And really, it wants to be more in that direction, the practical side of it. I don't mind if somebody who comes to visit comes and sees all the cows and all the sheep. If I've got something wrong with the paperwork, well, that is resolvable between you and us. And you would find, I think the farmers at one point, you'd gone really overboard as an outfit, and farmers were completely scared off by the paperwork. So in other words, you've got to be a bit of, you've got to hold our hands sometime to make sure it's right. And then perhaps what's the term? A helpline where if there is a problem, we can actually ring you up to try and sort out this problem as well, whether it's paper related or anything else related.
Thank you.
That's one point. Oh, I haven't finished yet. Sorry, lass.
Can you try and keep it brief, Stephen?
I will, but there's only 14 of us because the rest of us should be out farming, and I'm going to drive into Bradford with my tractor in 5 minutes to deliver my wool. So I'm putting in my pound of flesh now. Now, the other thing is, in a way, it's health and safety for us as the farmers.
Yeah.
And the tackle's right for your livestock, but is it right for the farmer? For example, anything as stupid as PTO guards, perhaps. Now, that might, from a point of view of a farmer, that actually might wind them up the wrong way. So in a way, that PTO guard wants correcting. That could be not a non-compliance, but it could be advisory, so that next time your people come around in 12 to 18 months, they can actually say, oh, well, that's right, you put that right, well, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Then the other thing, just very briefly, because it's the last point, and I didn't realize till the other day that with SF5, they've got nutrient management plans. This legislation's been in situ for since 2018. And for some reason, you haven't. You should put that in from the point
Yes.
of farmers.
I can tell you a story about that if you like.
Yeah, well, I think I've probably rabbited along enough in my out of spectrum way. So you can finish off with a story and answer all my points in the sense that it's a bit of give and take on all sides.
I don't disagree with most of what you say. I think some of the challenges we've got around assessors giving advice, that is not allowed under the ISO accreditation. So when we do an assessment, we've got to do an assessment and we've got to take things how they are on the day. If you had something as a non-conformance, the assessor can give you options. So they could say you can do A, B, or C, but they cannot say you need to do A, because if that is in fact wrong, that all comes back to public liabilities and insurance, etc. So that's really boring, but unfortunately sad but true. Majority of paperwork, I don't disagree with you. I think I've counted 56 pieces of paperwork. So one of the other elements which I am currently proposing within Red Tractor is that the first when the new standards come live, so let's say that's early 2027, if everything goes to plan, everybody will have a full assessment, so all the standards will be covered, and then we will start to look at doing what we call surveillance assessments. So your next assessment, we will be focusing on the 4 areas that underpin Red Tractor. So animal welfare, traceability, food safety, and environment. So we will spend more time with the animals and less time looking at paperwork. So hopefully that should take away some of the burden of the assessment, because we're not going to be looking at your vermin control records, for example, but we will be looking at your medicine records. And then that surveillance assessment may continue for another cycle. So in 4 assessments, you'll only have 2 full with all the paperwork. Does that make sense? Thumbs up. Looking at a farm and assessing whether someone's actually so just a bit of my background, you might not know, I was an animal welfare assessor for 10 years before I started this job. So I've travelled all over the world looking at variety of species from sheep to prawns. So I do believe that you can tell what a farm is like from how you appear, from what the appearance is. Don't disagree with that. But again, going back to my original comment, we have to go through all the standards because that's what we are required to do under the ISO accreditation. So we are a little bit handcuffed with that in some ways by the ISO accreditation. And is that all your points covered, I think?
Probably not, but it doesn't matter. I put the cat on the pigeons, I hope, which is a bit nothing unusual for me. But I thank you, Jemma. You sound very professional. The only other thing I would say, over the years, and whether that's because of the standards you've imposed on your inspectors, there's a very wide range between the inspectors' standards, the individual inspector standards, and there needs to be a bit more tightening of that possibly.
We have done some. So we did with the assessors, we do a bit of training in-house now with assessors. So I get the joy of marking the tests, and trust me, we do fail some people. And I think what we tend to find is probably a bit in life. You get some people who are people, and some people who probably shouldn't speak to people at all because they're not very personable. So it's how we balance them people out. So we do have a lot tighter training program now than we do, and a witness assessment program. So one of my colleagues goes out and witness assesses to see how assessors are performing out there. We're never going to get in full honesty, consistency, because we are all different people, and what you might like to have a niche look at may not be my thing, but I will look at something else. So I think for me, it's more about the personal skills and how they manage people than actually sometimes assessing the standards. And on the health and safety point, I remembered it now. If we'd obviously put the health and safety policy in November 21. So what we're asking people to do there is to have an honest assessment on their farm. If you can save one accident or save one life, that's got to be a good thing. But people have got to be engaged in that. And we get so many complaints because the health and safety policy is in the red tractor standards. So I can guarantee
that's for a reason.
you know, I went and did an assessment at a farm when I first started, and somebody was chopping wood without a cover on the saw on the back of the tractor, and then they actually leant over the saw to get the wood to chop it. And I thought, probably in a few years I'll see you in the paper where you've been chopped in half by your own wood saw. So I think it's beating the drum across the industry that health and safety is important, and you shouldn't take we all, you know, we probably all do take a little bit for granted every now and then, but I think sometimes we just need to take a little step back.
I totally agree with you, and well done. It looks like you're doing a good job, and you're up on the standards, and that's appreciated.
I'm trying.
Thank you very much. Long may it continue. Cheers.
Thanks, Stephen. You've given us a good start there, and very interesting that we're at first asking for advisory information, and Gemma's explained that's not possible. But you then said, well, at least give us some options, and that might be something which maybe you might be able to consider. If something isn't quite right in terms of conformance, maybe it might be possible to give options, at least to give farmers a pathway that they can go down to rectify. So that may be something to consider. Great points, well made, Stephen. Okay, anybody else on the meeting like to make a comment or ask Gemma a question?
I think, Joe, you've got a question. Do you want to ask it, Joe Coates?
Hi, yeah, just in terms of the paperwork. So my partner's parents were in Red Tractor and they left because of the amount of paperwork, but we were thinking about going back in. But how much would you I know it's like hard to say depending on the size of the farm. So we're like a small upland hill farm, and we're wondering how much paperwork it is because we have off-farm jobs as well. So we're just kind of thinking of like how much would we be able to manage it. And then, yeah, like, secondly, do you think that like Red Tractor is positive in terms of kind of like convincing the public of the good that farmers are doing as well? Like, do you think it's going to be essential in the future?
In terms of paperwork, most of the paperwork, probably, guesstimate, probably 80% of the paperwork that Red Tractor are asking for, you're already doing. So you'll already have your medicine records and a lot of the other bits. I suppose when the little paperwork errors, it tends to be things that haven't been updated annually, or there may be elements missing from that. But we have a whole host of templates on the website, and that covers quite a lot of the paperwork that's required. So if you take a look on there, you should be able to see if you think it's manageable, hopefully. We do a lot of consumer work. We have our marketing team. So basically all the licensee fees that we get, that goes into the marketing side of the business. So they spend quite a considerable amount on TV advertising, BVOD, which apparently is these videos in between YouTube, etc. And then other marketing tools that are out there. Obviously, TV is very expensive, and consumers do resonate with it. So as I say, we're at 72% trust. The challenge will always be that people, to an extent, will always buy on price, and how that balances out in the future will be interesting to see. So we do a lot, and the consumers do resonate with what Red Tractor do. You know, welfare, the consumer, it's the 84% of consumers still value welfare as important. You know, one of Red Tractor's pillars is animal welfare. Consumers resonate with that. Does it always come through to the buy-in choice? Not always, but we can't change that, unfortunately. I wish we could. Does that answer your questions, Joe?
Yeah, that was really helpful. Thank you.
I'll try and pop a link in the chat to the templates. I say try. we've just changed our website, so we're still all learning where everything is. There you go. You can have a look there at all the templates.
I must admit, I did have a look at the Red Tractor website this morning, and there's a heck of a lot of information, not just from a farmer's perspective, but right across the food chain sector. It really is quite interesting to have a look at that. I didn't know it was all there. So, yeah, well worth a look, guys. Okay, anybody else?
You can also see my modelling skills on the website if you didn't notice.
Too old for that.
You've got my dad on.
Oh, he's more my era. He's more. In my time as an auctioneer, I sold a lot of sheep to Jemma Holden. So back in the day, when prices were a heck of a lot different to the way they are now, it's what a strange world we're in when these prices are this reset that has happened, and red meat prices now at unheralded levels. So we've moved into a new era of opportunity. Okay. Thanks for that in the link. Have we got anybody else, Carol?
No, I think we're good. Has anybody else got any more questions?
Has Joe just put a hand up? Yes.
Just a quick one.
Joe, sorry, Joe.
This one might be one that I don't know, because it's like I'm new entrant as well, and we've never had visitors on the farm before, and we're going into like educational visits. Would that impact your red tractor?
No, so we have a few farms that do educational visits, and if on the website, there is some merchandise you can get, and that's free.
Thank you very much.
And if you need a number, just let me know, because I use mine all the time for other people.
Brilliant. Useful information. Anybody else? We've all been very, very polite, haven't we? I have actually got a question on my phone that has been texted to me by one of our members in North Cumbria, who's currently sitting on his tractor mowing grass and watching the black clouds forming as he does so. I'll save that one. Is anybody else anything they'd like to hear from Jemma? Any questions? Okay, well, it's down to me then. And I'm sure this is a subject that you have discussed and come across many times. So my friend writes, we've all seen the supermarkets using red tractor logos alongside pictures of farmers and British livestock above shelves crammed with New Zealand, Australian lamb, Uruguayan beef. What is red tractor trying to do about this? Seeing as there is a zero tolerance on farmers crossing the rules and standards, but supermarkets seem to be able to get away with it. We're spending long hours to comply. This is a mental strain as well as physical. And it's about time Red Tractor started standing up to the supermarkets and helping us, the people who pay their wages. So that's the question. I am just the messenger. Do not shoot me, Jemma. What about this issue?
We get it all the time. I'm trying to find the answer. So this sits with our marketing and commercial team. So we see it quite a lot. I won't name any retailers. I'm trying to just spin through the chats where they have Red Tractor logo, British farming, or other.
My mate did name them, but I decided not to do that, not to say that.
I'm trying to find the answer from commercial, but there's loads of people's faces on this channel instead. So if we have evidence of supermarkets doing that, we will contact them and get them to ask them politely if they will change. It's not always possible because of their commercial decisions, unfortunately. So we have picked it up. I think we've picked it up with, I can't remember who it was, maybe Tesco. I'm trying to see if I can. We have a really good picture somewhere of it. Hold that thought.
Yeah, well, seeing as there's only 30 of us on the call, my friend seemed to think that perhaps Sainsbury's might be the worst, along with Tesco. That's what he'd said. So
I know we've definitely spoke to Tesco, and I think we've spoke to somebody else, because sometimes we get sent out to go shopping, to go and see what's on the shelves and how it looks.
So you are aware that from time to time there is an issue, and it is something which you do act upon to a certain extent.
Yeah, if we know about it, because obviously some of us are lazy and do online shopping. So, but if we find out about it, we absolutely will. we have limited good work with them, because it's up to their goodwill, because it's easier for them to keep their cabinet space saying British than what it is. And they will argue that actually, because it says British, they're still supporting British farmers, even though that's ridiculous. But we do challenge them if we get evidence of it.
I think that's reassuring to know, isn't it? It might be great if you could actually get that message out there to a greater extent, because I think a lot of farmers are quite prepared to support the process of assurance, but they want to feel that also Red Tractor has their back as well. Standards have to be upheld, yes, but farmers want to feel that somebody's got their back in the process as well. So I think that's what the question was about.
The other thing that we do as well, so you've probably heard about, I call it fungi gate, but I get told off for that, mushroom gate, where the mushrooms were labelled from whatever country with the Red Tractor logo, or the carrots. We absolutely, when that happens, we contact whichever retailer it is, and we put a plan in place to understand what happened. 9 times out of 10, it's human error. Literally, it's just someone hasn't changed the labels over to take the Red Tractor logo off. And then we also, whoever is the supplier of them products that's got the Red Tractor on, that's not from the UK, they have to put a action plan in place of how to prevent it happening again. And that's all dealt with by our licensing team. So there's a whole process that gets involved there. And I can probably share that as well, actually, because we did a story about that.
Okay. When you say share, you mean on a link? You'll give us a link to it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
okay. Right. Any other questions from anybody on the call?
Sorry, Adam, the bad penny returns. What about just general communication? In other words, there wants to be possibly better communication in some medium, but I'm not sure which, between the trying to get the existing farmers in, but trying to get new farmers back in, and whether or not you do bits with the farming press. Occasionally you see, but it's more like advertising rather than just pointing out as a standards organization what your standards are and the pros and cons of it, and it benefits your business, which above all actually is probably my biggest benefit of it. I don't think I probably get in a store ring get any benefit, a financial benefit of being farm assured, but I do get a benefit as a farmer trying to manage my farm slightly better and therefore more profitable. So perhaps the only way of perhaps improving the game for all of us is the communication both ways. In other words, if we saw a thing in the supermarket, a Red Tractor next door to a New Zealand shop, you could actually take a picture and send it over to Red Tractor, for example.
You can do that.
Yeah, for example. But it's just the communication in general, just to try and give us all reassurance that we're all batting for the same team here. And we need to get more farmers into it, because I'd probably missed it, but what percentage of farmers are in some form of assurance scheme?
It's hard to estimate, particularly in the beef and lamb sector, because it is a fragmented, and the beef supply chain is so there's lots of elements to it. So a sheep farm, arguably, you're either going to be a breeder finish or you're going to be a store to finish. Whereas the beef is more complex, so it's difficult to say exactly what percent. So we cover 82% of finished beef, but arguably, because we're not lifetime assured, there's a lot of sucklers that wouldn't be. But with more beef coming from the dairy herd, we'll find more cattle now that yo-yo out of assurance. They'll start off as assured under the dairy holding, drop out, and then come back in as a finisher. So the absolute aim is to get more members. We want people to be assured because they want to be, not because they need to be. Now, in my personal view, super honestly, there is no point trying to go out now and get a whole host of new members in, because we need to build on that farmer trust. And so that is going to be a slow and steady process. So we are starting with the standards review, looking at how we can audit better and more efficiently. And then I'm hoping that once we do that, we will start to see more members coming on the scheme. But we don't want to disengage people when we're at the stage where we're at, when we're at a kind of new era in some ways. So, and in terms of comms, we have a new comms director. So she started, maybe March, I think. So we do a monthly member matters. So every member should get a member matters. We do any technical briefings.
Paperwork? Is that paper or through email?
That comes through through email every month, and then we do
email,
two.
right.
We do 2 printed a year, but that costs us, I think it's about 60 grand just to do one mail shot to all our members. So it's quite resource heavy, that as well. So we are trying to work better on our communications and for that to be two-way. So and make it beneficial to the member, that they're not just seeing it as propaganda when we send things.
Adam and his crew bring out a newsletter every Friday, for example. You wouldn't perhaps want to do that, but you could do it perhaps every month. Don't overburden us with a lot of information in one go, where you could actually do over 3 or 4 goes. So it's information overload.
And then we've tried to do a little bit on social media. So we try and support all the industry campaigns. So we've done Great British Beef Week, Love Lamb Week. And then obviously we're going to be supporting Farm 24 as well. So and just done the Yellow Wellies campaign, was it last week, I think, or the week before? So we do try and support them and link it back to our standards where possible, so that it's relevant to the members. So there's the whole host.
What about the pesky people at government? There was talk about a bit since that they were trying to increase welfare standards. Has that sort of died a bit of a death? Because I didn't know, from a farm assurance perspective, I didn't know how they could increase it any further. Was that just a bit of service?
I think interesting, if you read the EFSA report that came out yesterday on beef welfare, they've recommended that we up space from 3 meters squared per animal to 13 meters squared per animal. And then we get rid of any double muscle breeds. But EFSA always recommend the best of the best. Yeah, I'm reading that report now, actually, so I'll send it a link over. So we keep abreast of what's happening within legislation. So obviously the transport one is something that is potentially going to change. We do keep up to date with them. I think in terms of welfare, there's always talk about changing the welfare legislation. One of the they are outdated, some of the legislative agreements that are in place, and I think it will even though we're not part of Europe, I think a lot of it will depend on what Europe do to make sure that them free trade deals continue. So there's no talk of any increase in welfare at the minute in terms of legislation. There's lots of scientific opinions, but there's not a lot of actual talk of changing legislation.
That'll do me for now. But no doubt they're not particularly trustworthy, that lot. So you just got to keep your eyes in the back of your head on that one.
The problem is, I think, without being too crude, there's a lot of people in the government that haven't got an understanding. So they're trying to force down the track what actually is completely impractical, and they don't understand what happens on farm. You know, I sat in the government consultation in Scotland about EID tags, and the whole conversation spoke about one subject, and then the guy from government asked the same question again, and I thought, you've been sat here for an hour listening to this. It was like deja vu. So there is a few practical people in government, but I think it's trying to get them to be in the right place. And we do engage with the government.
Correct, good.
We'd like to do it more. We'd like to have more recognition for the work that happens, but DEFRA is resistant to pay farms to do something that is in an assurance scheme. That's a slightly different view to what the Scots and the Welsh have, obviously. So if you take, for example, the pathway, the DEFRA health and welfare pathway, Scotland have a similar system in Scotland, and if you're part of an assurance scheme, you get a tick in the box for that, whereas we've had to offer the earned recognition for the DEFRA pathway, not the opposite way. So each devolved government works differently, which adds an added complexity for us, particularly in dairy, because red tractor beef and lamb is only England, and then we've got fowl QMS and Northern Ireland beef and lamb, whereas dairy, we cover all the devolved nations. So we've got to manage the devolved nations governments as well, and they all do something different.
Yeah, because dairy, actually, they've really had to up their game, the dairy farmers.
I think the dairy farmers have upped the game because their processor has paid for them
Correct.
to up their game. Whereas, again, beef and lamb is still a fragmented industry, which in fairness, that's one of the benefits to beef and lamb, is that you've got options to sell assured versus non-assured. Look at lambs, you know, without the ethnic and export market, there wouldn't be
Absolutely.
a real good lamb trade. Whereas dairy, we cover 98% of the industry. That is a massive challenge if somebody loses their assurance for any amount of time. The minute they're suspended for whether that's not submitting corrective evidence, whether they have done something naughty, that impacts them straight away. Whereas if you were non-assured as a beef and sheep farmer, actually you've got alternative options. So whilst there is still an aspiration within Red Tractor for lifetime assurance, we don't want everybody assured. Because let's be honest, some people probably shouldn't be farming, never mind insurance. And you know, that it also impacts the market when you can't sell your assured products. So it's having the right balance to get lifetime assurance without inconveniencing people at the same time.
That diverse market you talked about probably gives you the reason why you're at 55% on lamb in terms of membership, whereas 10, 15 years ago when I was working full-time in the auction trade, that figure I would think, unless you tell me otherwise, would have been a lot higher. And what that I think shows also is the continued rise of that ethnic market, which will without doubt become more and more and more important and bigger as time goes by. But
and
that then gives you an opportunity.
We have had conversations with the halal sector about whether they could recognise Red Tractor because some of their principles and our principles. So absolutely, our red line is no stum. We will not have anything with the Red Tractor logo on with no stum. But some of their core principles about traceability and welfare align with Red Tractor. They've been super honest and said because the assessments aren't carried out by a Muslim, there would be no trust there. And that's a barrier that we've give them options of how we could work better together, whether that's doing witness assessments, etc., with one of their bodies. So we're looking to develop that work because we do see that, you know, because I'm not going to lie, we have lost beef and lamb members. And the reason why we've lost beef and lamb members is because there is alternative markets outside of assurance.
I would have just said there's a risk that government will see that they've managed to get that 98% assurance with cows. If they want to improve it, they're going to try and ram through something to bring the sheep and the beef sectors up to that particular level of assurance. That's my biggest concern, especially for some farmers who wouldn't be capable of doing that.
I'm not sure whether this government anyway, has a huge value towards assurance.
Let me throw it back to the room because I'm conscious we've got less than 5 minutes now. Anybody else like to make any comments or questions that we have left? It's all quiet. Okay. Well, in that case, I think we've given it a pretty good airing, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to say a big thank you to Jemma. I think the message you've given us and the explanations and the knowledge has been very, very, very useful. Red Tractor often comes up in the conversation around the auction ring still to this day. And it's nice to know that we've got somebody like you. You understand the industry. You've been born and bred to it as well. And at the end of the day, anything which can add value to product is valued and necessary. And a lot of farmers in the past have felt that Red Tractor hasn't added value to what they're doing. It's seeing that bigger picture and the hope that the supermarkets come down to support us to a greater extent than we feel we've had in the past, particularly with those issues about imported as well. But I think there's a realization in supermarket level now that we need farming, we need food production in this country. And whilst food security is not a policy issue at the minute for government, it's going to be in the future. I'm convinced about that. And if Red Tractor in the future can give us the boost to increase public confidence in buying British in the future, wouldn't that be fantastic? So big thank you to you, Jemma. And
no problem.
Big
and if anybody has any questions, you know, after or in the future about Red Tractor assessments, send them over to me. More than happy to help. I wouldn't consider it hassling. So the door's always open for questions and queries.
Thank you, Jemma. A big thank you to my colleague Carol for manning the lines for us. And this recording will be put onto our YouTube channel. So if any of your pals, you think it might be worth them having a listen to it at some stage in the future on a cold winter's night or something like that, it will be on our Farmer Network YouTube channel. Jemma, thank you very much. We'll close the meeting for now, and hopefully we'll catch up with you soon. Cheers, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
All the best. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. Bye-bye. Thanks.